have the pleasure of looking at two of them.
My goodness, that is some wall hanging you have.
Good morning.
Good morning. Ya, préndela. No, the meeting's gonna start, but if you can't turn it on, then just leave it there. Entrar. Have quorum, Michael.
Oh, excellent. Clearly your counting skills are superior to mine, so glad to hear that. All right, so I'd like to get this meeting started. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Community Advisory Board General Meeting. Kind of our protocol with the Zoom is that we're going to start with introductions. We do roll call for our CAB members to ensure that we have quorum. Would you assist on that, please, Nicole?
I'll do roll call introductions, and then if everyone else would like to introduce themselves in the chat. Dayla.
Here.
Crawford.
Here,
Dante.
Here.
Lila.
Here.
Michael.
Here.
Dr. Hernandez.
Here.
And Dr. Cole.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Hey, and as Nicole mentioned, and we do have probably about 14 or 15 more people here. And we actually have an opportunity for you maybe just to introduce yourself. Maybe just give your name and tell us where you're from. What's the most organized way to do this,
Well, I had asked him to do it in chat, but if you want to go
Oh,
around.
no, that's perfect. Oh, you're perfect. You've been doing a lot of these lately, so.
It works for the full body because there's a lot more usually.
Well, thank you. So what we do here is actually we give an opportunity for folks to make any announcements.
ORJ has a couple unless someone else would like to go first.
Why don't you go first, and then maybe that'll start the ball rolling if there's
Okay.
some other folks.
There's just a couple upcoming events. I sent out a notice yesterday to our ORJ contact list about the rescheduled housing webinar that was last month. And that was the Council of Justice and Behavioral Health and the Council of the State Government's Justice Center on housing. And that's rescheduled for August 18th. I believe that's next Wednesday, if I'm correct. From 2 to 3:30. And the other event I sent out, I don't know if I just sent it out to the CAB, I think I did, was the RISE Learning Session on disability justice. Specifically sent it out to CAB for those in the policy budget subcommittee that's working on racial equity and social justice within their work plan, and thought it would be an interesting learning session for them to join. And that's scheduled for Tuesday, August 24th from 1 to 3. If someone didn't receive that information, if you want to put your email in the chat, I can also forward those two events to you as well. That's all.
Thank you, Nicole. Are there any other announcements?
Good morning, everyone. Tiffany and I are lead reentry coach with the Reentry Success Center. We are still recruiting for our upcoming Alpha cohort. Our orientation is Thursday and Friday of next week, and we are scheduled to begin, Monday, August 24th. So if you do have any individuals who could benefit or possibly be interested in the program, please feel free to refer them to us. That way we can get them assessed and enrolled in time for the orientation and the program beginning these next couple of weeks. And we also are having our monthly maintenance. Our men's group is having our monthly maintenance of our adopted green space Saturday, August 21st from 10 to 2 p.m. as well, which we're also looking really forward to. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tiffany. Any other announcements? All right, hearing none. Our next part of the agenda is actually open for public comment on any item under the jurisdiction of CAB, and that's not on this agenda. Okay, so hearing no public comment, agenda item number 3 is the approval of the minutes from July 8th general meeting. And on July 23rd, we actually had an ad hoc planning meeting as well. right, members, how are we looking on that? As far as okay in the minutes?
I'd like to make a motion. This is Lila to approve the minutes from last month.
I second. This is Dr. Hernandez.
And those are, the motion is for both of them?
Yes.
Yes, please.
All right. Any public comment before we vote on those? All right. We can vote on there was a motion to approve the minutes from the last two meetings. It was seconded. Could you do a roll call for us, please, Nicole, so we can vote?
Shayla? Crawford?
Aye.
Dante?
Aye.
Lila?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Dr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Kenya?
Aye.
And Dr. Cole?
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So up next, we actually have a presentation from ORJ, a housing presentation. And Denise, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Michael. Good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Denise Sabkievich. I'm with the Office of Reentry and Justice, and I'm the Research and Evaluation Manager here. I have been asked to provide a bit of a background on AB 109 housing, what we fund now, a bit of background on the research as we understand it for the reentry population and the complexities that surround housing. I'm gonna pull up a screen here and walk you through my presentation. So bear with me just a minute. Does everyone see a full slide rather than multiple slides?
I see your notes.
You see my notes. Okay, thank you. Let's swap that. How about that one?
We're good.
Okay, perfect. All right. So as I mentioned, what I'm going to be sharing with you is information that comes from the research literature, as well as what we know about what's going on in our county and where some of the gaps are. So what we know about the links between housing instability and justice involvement is that the relationships are rather complex. Incarceration, we know, criminal justice involvement, we know, is a major risk factor for homelessness for a number of different reasons. We know nationally that people who have had a former interaction with the criminal justice system are 10 times more likely to experience housing instability and homelessness than the general population. We also know that individuals with complex behavioral health needs have higher needs of justice involvement in housing instability. And fundamentally, this leads to cycles and pathways, multiple pathways of behavioral health issues, housing instability issues, criminal justice involvement, these relationships. There is no one direct pathway here. There are multiple pathways. It is a complex spider's web of relationships that are also major factors include racial disparities surrounding housing access, as well as general poverty. We also know that safe, affordable, and permanent housing is widely recognized as one of the most critical components of successful reentry. But there are lots of challenges in our county surrounding this. There are the what we would call collateral consequences of drug or sex-related convictions that make housing availability a challenge for reentrants. As I mentioned, racial discrimination in the rental markets, access and affordability is a major factor in this area, whether you have a history of justice involvement or not. And then there are the stigmas and misconceptions that surround tenants who have behavioral health conditions. And are they clean and sober? Are they problematic with regard to the rest of the community? So these are challenges that tenants as well as landlords face. And these are issues that are not just in our county. This is literature that comes from all over the country, and there is no reason to believe, from my perspective, that Contra Costa County is exempt from these challenges. From everything I can tell, we are in the heart of them. So what do we see here? And what do we know about these kinds of challenges in our county? Drawing from the data that I have access to in my role with the ORJ, we know that there are high levels of behavioral health needs among our population that is in custody. When I look at the Game Plan for Success program data from last fiscal year, so this would be the 2019-2020 data, which is the complete data that I have right now. So this report and this program draws on the George Mason University Risk, Needs, and Responsivity Assessment. And that assessment speaks to critical needs of individuals who are participating in the program. So among those individuals who have only one critical need, okay, and that's a relatively small population, mental health needs are the most common. And so we know that, you know, mental health issues surrounding medication and treatment are a huge factor. The next most critical need for those is health insurance, which makes perfect sense, but also substance abuse needs. So we see right away that mental health, behavioral health issues are common. We also know that for those who have two critical needs, some form and some combination of substance use and mental health needs are included in the top 4 most common pair of needs. And furthermore, co-occurring mental health and substance use needs are by far the most common pair of needs. So this would speak to the severity and the complexity of behavioral health problems among the population that we're seeking to serve. And then for those, while there are fewer of them, the individuals that have 3 critical needs, here we go. We line up with the 3 of them: mental health, substance abuse, and housing. So this is the most critical combination with for the trio of critical needs, followed by individuals who have only 2 needs that look to be what I would say that complex co-occurring disorders issues or needs, followed by those who have more only a single need, but also clearly related to behavioral health. So that comes again from data with regard to the Game Plan for Success program. What I want to say about that data is that this is I would say not reflective of the entire reentry population. About 10% of individuals enroll in this program. And I would also suggest that the participants in the Game Plan for Success program are highly motivated to succeed. And so that the real data within the reentry population would speak to more severe needs than what I'm showing here. But overall, what we know is that 60% of the Game Plan for Success participants have any substance use disorder, and 30% have what the GMU R&R would identify as a severe substance use disorder. And again, this is among individuals who are motivated to participate, with the likelihood that the general population of those in the jails have a higher level of need than what we're seeing in these participants. And so when I look then too at the community report from last year that speaks to the data that the sheriff's office shared, what we can see there, and you can see clearly if you pull up that report, is declining rates of incarceration. We know that with COVID, that there were a good number of individuals were released from custody. So the counts of individuals in custody has gone down. However, when you look again with a different lens towards those same counts, what we see is that the numbers of individuals with diagnosed behavioral health conditions is comparable to previous years. So while the overall population of individuals in custody is going down, the number of people in the jails with complex behavioral health needs is staying the same. So this leads to a higher percentage of those with behavioral health needs and complex needs in the in-custody population. So overall, what we're seeing is a high level of complex behavioral health needs and housing needs in our justice-involved populations. So what do these critical needs tell us about the housing needs? And the evidence suggests that a highly effective way to reduce future justice involvement is to connect folks with housing as they leave custody. And when paired with supportive services, housing can also serve as a platform to address underlying behavioral health needs. And so housing is, in this evidence, housing serves more than just shelter. It serves as an opportunity, if it's shaped properly, to support individuals with their treatment and addressing their complex needs. So the most effective interventions draw from a housing first approach. And this is where housing is made available to individuals without barriers. And what I mean by that is that there are no preconditions such as sobriety or treatment engagement. Okay, this is what a housing first model is. Now, this model has a good number of challenges to it as it gets implemented in various jurisdictions. Some landlords want to ensure that individuals are sober, that they're treatment engaged, that they mandate or require that that there is basically that it's a sober living environment. That is not effective with the population that we're talking about, at least according to the research literature and the evidence. So as a result of that, California is now requiring all state-funded housing programs that serve individuals experiencing homelessness to use this approach. And I just want to give another plug for the webinar that is being hosted by CSG next week. This is the report that they're speaking about. They launched this report in February. It's a really, I believe, a really critical perspective on how we should be providing services for a really highly vulnerable population. So if you can't go to the seminar and webinar next week, please download or consider downloading the report. It's fairly brief. It's about 12 pages or something. And if you don't have the link, please let me or Nicole know and we can share it with you. But fundamentally, this is the evidence that that report speaks to. So with that in mind, I want to share, really what we consider, or the research community broadly considers, housing first approaches. And the first one is called permanent supportive housing, which is subsidized housing that is driven by tenants that includes wraparound services, such as case management, mental health treatment, supported employment, substance abuse programs, whatever, the wraparound services and the individual needs, the case management supports that. So this is a really intensive and relatively expensive approach that is generally held back and reserved for individuals with the most serious of needs, for both behavioral health treatment as well as housing supports. The evidence surrounding this program shows that it increases not only housing retention and service engagement, but also it reduces the cycles of interdepartmental and agency interactions. So it significantly reduces ED, and emergency department visits, as well as criminal justice and recidivism. So it's a strongly supported program, but again, it's difficult because it's expensive. The next approach is a rapid rehousing approach, and this is also considered housing first. And this is typically reserved for individuals who have more support, who might need help with employment and financial resources, but that they have a support system in place to keep them stably housed, as well as have a support system in place surrounding their behavioral health needs. So this tends to be time limited. It provides shorter term rental assistance, as well as other supports that might be necessary, such as housing navigation and move-in costs, things along those lines. So fundamentally, this is more limited, whereas the other approach is more, more longer term. But the individual assessments of housing and behavioral health needs determine which model is the most appropriate. And so this would be also the other factor that needs to play into this is the GMU R&R surrounding the risk, needs, and responsivity assessment as to whether or not the individual is a high risk, high needs, or a lower, more moderate risk in needs. So these assessments all need to come together to determine which is the best approach for the individuals that we're serving. So the AB 109 housing services, I understand that Nicole Green, I believe, gave a presentation surrounding Shelter Inc. services in the past month or two, as well as Lau. And so what I would say is that Shelter Inc. has a broad range of different kinds of housing services. I believe that they provide some rapid rehousing. They're primarily provide SLEs. They do have a program that is not funded by AB 109, but that is supportive. I believe it's, what is it? It's prisoners, oh, gosh darn, I can't remember if somebody remembers what it is, but fundamentally it provides housing for individuals who are returning from the prison system. So it's a BSCC funded program. So they have multiple programs that they can refer individuals to, but these are the programs that our AB 109 funding provides. Miss Shirley's also provides housing. It's a specialized type of transitional housing with supports. It's relatively small, but as you can see, most of these types of housing none of them provide permanent supportive housing. And most of them are transitional or SLEs. So if I'm coming home to my community from custody and I have other kinds of needs, I have more complex behavioral health needs, the programs that are offered by AB 109 funding are not going to meet my needs. So what other housing options are available? What programs are specifically oriented for individuals leaving custody that are not AB 109 funded? Well, probation funds Hope Solutions. That is also more of as I understand it, transitional housing kind of program. And Positive Futures, this is what it is. I'm sorry. This is the Shelter Inc. program for individuals returning to the community from prison. So this is a grant that Shelter Inc. has. So these are two other options specifically oriented towards individuals leaving custody. So then what if we look at the other housing options that are available, say not for individuals returning to custody? What do we have that is available to the general population? Well, we know we have emergency shelters. Based upon the 2021 HIC results, there are 782 beds available there. There are 181 beds available in transitional housing. We have 243 beds available in rapid rehousing and 1,242 beds available in permanent supportive housing. Okay, and these are all beds that are almost always full at 90% or more capacity. Okay, and this is for the entire population. This is not in any way focused on our reentry community. We also know that housing funded by HUD, which is the Housing and Urban Development, the federal agency that monitors or provides funds for counties and states, requires a housing needs assessment, which is called the VI-SPDAT. And this assessment basically ranks individuals based upon their needs. There's a score, and that score determines whether you are a high need individual that requires permanent supportive housing or more moderate need with regard to rapid rehousing or some other type of housing services. On average in our county, and by the way, this is information that I have collected from H3, and I've worked with their research and evaluation manager and team to gather this information. But on average, there are approximately 1,000 households in the county and 1,400 individuals on what we call the housing list or the housing queue. So these individuals have gone through the BI-SPDAT and have been ranked, and there are 1,400 individuals on that list waiting for housing on any given day. H3 draws on a dynamic prioritization process, is what they call it, of this eligible population list to make determinations about who is the best fit for any given housing availability. And that is a judgment call that is based upon the housing that is available, the individual or housing needs. So it's not necessarily that you're at the top of the list with your score. It's also about whether you're a fit appropriately for the housing, and they do their best to make a match that is going to be successful. But what I think is important also to keep in mind is, of those 1,000 households, okay, 77% of the general population needs in our county for housing qualify for permanent supportive housing. So that means that in the general population, we have a high level of need for housing first programs. 20% qualify for rapid rehousing services. So what you're looking at there, if you add it up, is 98% of the individuals, households in the queue in the general population qualify for housing first services. And further, HUD-funded housing essentially disqualifies the reentry population because individuals are required to be chronically homeless. So if you're in custody for more than 90 days, you are disqualified. So our population, AB 109 doesn't fund evidence-based practices or very limited housing services. We have a high level of need for housing first services that we're not funding. And when we look into what's going on in the general population in our county needs, the needs in the county are just as great, if not greater, than the population that we're trying to serve. So in my mind, this is a bit of a problem because the evidence-based programs for housing are very limited in our county. As I said, currently there are no AB 109 funded housing first programs, and the housing first housing and programs that is available for reentrance is rapid rehousing. And the rapid rehousing is fantastic, and it meets the needs of some proportion of the population we're trying to serve. But the real challenge is for those individuals who need permanent supportive housing, who are moderate to high risk, who have behavioral health needs that are not receiving permanent supportive housing because AB 109 doesn't offer it, but there's such a long wait list for it in the broad community. So this population is not getting services that are evidence-based. They're getting services that do not necessarily meet their needs and are not the most efficient and most effective.
I'm sorry, Denise, I just need to jump in. Somebody on a phone is not muted and it's causing some noise and it's getting distracting.
Oh, sure. Could everybody ensure that they are muted, please? Thanks, Jill. So further, the need for public or permanent supportive housing in the county's general population is great. And as I said, the need for permanent supportive housing and the general population in the county is over 1,000 households. And it will be even greater if we consider our reentry population. So what is ORJ doing about this? What are some of the future directions that we have here? Our office is moving in the direction of performance-based contracting that draws specifically on evidence-based programs. So our next cycle of AB 109 service procurement will start this winter for the fiscal year 2022 through 25. And this new RFP will expect providers to consult with the evidence-based program clearinghouse that's called Results First, or any other evidence-based clearinghouse, to identify programs that have been evaluated and shown to be effective. So the idea would be that we would not be funding programs that have not been funded or have not been evaluated to be a model program or a promising program. While there's going to be opportunities for innovation, the idea is that providers would identify a program that is evidence-based for the target population that we're interested in serving, and that they would ensure fidelity to that program. And what I mean by fidelity is that their program is implemented in a way that is aligned with the intentions and the design and the theory of the program that was evaluated prior. And the notion here would be that we could develop our own evidence base that would say, oh, wow, okay, this research literature shows that Housing First, and this is a perfect example, Housing First is effective for this population, and it reduces other interactions with other systems like health services, things along those lines, and it increases employment and housing stability, employment stability, et cetera. But we could then assess that in our jurisdiction that we are saying the exact same things. We don't have that ability right now. Moving in this direction allows us to set the stage for that and allows us to ensure that we are funding programs that are known to be effective in other jurisdictions, while also allowing us to assess whether that is effective in our jurisdiction. And fundamentally what that means is that all populations are different. And an example that I like to use is that, Kansas looks really different than California. And if there is a program that's been shown to be really effective in Kansas, it doesn't mean that it's going to be really effective in California, because our population is different. Our population needs are different culturally and otherwise. So this gives us an opportunity to draw on that evidence and say, okay, it might be effective in Kansas, but can we determine if it's effective here? So that becomes an important step moving forward. I would also say that we recognize fully that training is going to be important. We're going to be having training and information sessions with all of our community-based partners, as well as other organizations that might be interested in moving forward for AB 109 services. Housing will be one of them, as well as employment, and all of our housing-based services are going to be moving in this direction. But as I wrap it back around to housing, I do want to say that we applied for the the CSG Community of Practice program for developing collaborations within the county surrounding housing needs. And unfortunately, the program was so, got so much attention and but they don't have the capacity to help support all the counties that were interested in it. We were not selected. However, we got really good support from H3 and other units across the county that we are hoping to collaborate further and maybe develop our own community of practice program that looks at housing needs as we move forward. And then finally, I want to say, I know one of the things that CAB has recommended in previous, I think it was last year, is that we work with H3 to develop measures of housing outcomes, whatever those might be. Moving in this direction with our RFPs will allow us to do that. I am in collaboration with H3. We are working towards getting a memorandum of understanding in place so that we can share data. They are trying to collect data surrounding justice involvement among the population that they serve. And, you know, they're just unsure about how accurate that is. With our collaboration, we will be able to determine how accurate that is and see what the needs are on their side and where individuals are ending up in the services that they get. So we're moving in that direction. And I think that that's about it. Does anybody have any questions? I know it was a lot of information. I'm not seeing any raised hands.
I have a quick question, Denise. So you said that if they're in custody for 90 days, then they don't qualify as homeless, right? So then what happens when they leave custody? What are their options?
Right. That's essentially the point, is that then individuals then would be referred to Shelter Inc. Or Lau or Miss Shirley's, which we all know many are at capacity. But the other thing that we're finding is that individuals who spend a good bit of time in custody do not want to live in SLE. Sober living environments have a good number of rules that are attached to their housing, and individuals are not inclined to participate. They've had those rules and their boundaries, and they want to have a little bit more choice. So the SLE environment is not as effective for some folks.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, Michelle, is what do we do? And if we know that somebody has a complex behavioral health need and Shelter Inc., Lau, and our AB 109 funded service providers can't serve them, then we try to link them up with H3 to see, well, what other programs do they have? There is Hope Solutions. There's the Positive Futures if somebody is coming out of the state system, but then Hope Solutions is not permanent supportive housing, which is maybe what the need is. So you get into a system of care that's basically not meeting your needs. And that's where I think we then get into this cycle of, and I know I'm speaking to the choir with you. I know you know all this. So it does speak to a huge need, I believe, for dedicated reentry permanent supportive housing. And we don't have that right now. And we know we have a population in custody that has those needs.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right.
You're welcome. You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you, Denise. I think thank you very much for that presentation, Denise. And you
You're
are
welcome.
speaking to the choir in some sense, but I think it was very important for us to get the lay of the land, as it were, going forward. Thank you. Actually, we also have another presentation. Dr. Hernandez is a presentation of the subcommittee research toward they want to talk about racial and gender disparities. Doctor?
Okay. Nicole's gonna share my screen. I'm gonna present today on racial and gender disparities in the county. And so I'm getting used to this presenting with Zoom, so be a little patient. Thank you. Next slide. So as part of the Policy and Budget Committee, I'm asking, okay, what do they do? So the name of the committee for the CAB is the Policy and Budget Committee. Our purpose is to make recommendations to advance the effectiveness of the AB 109 funds, like Denise was talking about, and the proper distribution. Our responsibilities with CAB is related to collaborating with other groups, other subcommittees, making recommendations as it relates to the reentry program, services, and different populations. As a clinical psychologist in Contra Costa County, specializing in trauma and disability, it's essential that we kind of look at the discrepancies between the statistics in the county and how we can make it more inclusive. So as part of this, our CAB committee, I think it's important to collaborate and look at this, analyze it a little bit further. The budget, the policy part is pretty self-explanatory, and I'll go over that. The budget, I'm really looking for suggestions and feedback from all of you, because I don't know how much all of this will cost, but I do know the key players that probably should be involved. Next slide. So that's a little bit about the Policy and Budget Subcommittee. And for the introduction, I don't have to remind everybody that, you know, the US criminal justice system is the largest in the world. And there's over 2.2 million incarcerated in not only federal, state, and local prisons and jails. And looking at the research, it was through the census, there is, you know, there's empirical evidence that shows that across the board, Blacks receive sentences more, at least 10% more. I think statistics now are probably somewhat greater. And while everybody looks at gender and race, Ozzy and I kind of come at this from a different angle. I, in keeping with transparency, really want to include disability. And when I'm talking about disability, I think it's really important right now to realize that behavior, like Denise said, complex behavioral health problems are on the rise, just as much as disabilities are being, how can I say this, much more varied. So next slide. This is from the Probation Department in the Contra Costa Superior Court. And if you can see, I don't know if it's big enough for you guys, but it shows the discrepancies between different races. And I thought it was pretty self-explanatory. If you guys need any clarification, you can ask me. Next slide. And the statistics pretty much show that, you know, while African Americans only make up under 10% of the population in our county, but yet they're charged with almost 30% of all criminal cases. The disparity there is pretty significant. And as African American adults make up 30% of probationers. Next slide. Oh, and then it talks about that the children make up 41% of probationers, which is 4 times the representation, but yet only African Americans only make up 7.5% of jurors. And then Latinos, while they make up 21.3%, it says, I think that's probably closer to almost, I would say 28 to 30% in Contra Costa. They only make up 14.9% of jurors. Next slide. So to kind of refresh, to maintain transparency with the data and be completely inclusive and equitable, I think we should advocate for a universal platform. So like Denise was saying, we can have evidence-based research. And while keeping in mind the Board of Supervisors data and the CAB data talks about the community engagement and how we can incorporate and outreach different populations, which I think really is critical. The data collection management is interesting because for some reason I assumed that the county used the same statisticians across the board. But the more I looked into the research, it was confusing. And even as I looked back at this presentation, sometimes it made sense to me and sometimes it confused me. So to help other people in the community and even our CAB board, I think it would be beneficial if we could define or have one platform that we all understand. And then the reporting talks about how the Board of Supervisors wants that. And then the funding I thought was interesting is 2.4 million. And that is for, I was gonna ask Michael, 4 years. And I don't have the numbers on that, but I can get those for you because I wanted to see how that was broken down. Next slide. And so basically going back to goals, and I realized I got off track when I started talking about disability. And I want to go back to that. So under disability now, I think it would be really imperative if in the intake forms, we ask clients what type of disability they have. So people have physical disabilities, psychiatric disabilities, developmental disabilities, and there's a difference. And I'm noticing recently within the last 3 to 6 months, there's been so much more crisis work being done that a lot of forensic clients are reacting and becoming violent, but it's because of, like Denise said, the combination of being in the criminal justice system with the trauma of whatever brought them there, combined with the fact that once they are in custody or released, they can't get access to proper medication is almost like an endless cycle of they're going to repeat the pattern and then they're going to be back in the system. I see this constantly. And so when we take the data for these statistics, I think it's important that we qualify what type of disability each individual has, and they can have more than one, so co-occurring disorders and disabilities. And that's kind of like the next step, because it's everybody is claiming that they're disabled, and everybody comes in the office and says, I'm schizophrenic, I'm bipolar, I'm this. They don't know. But so I think it's important not just to ask the clients that, but to properly train law enforcement as well, because it's not fair for them to have to, people assume that they just know what to do, but if they're not trained in procedure on different mental illnesses or different disabilities, it's crucial. I mean, there's a big difference between somebody having drug-induced psychosis compared to somebody that's psychotic. And if they don't have the right medication, it's going to trigger them and they're going to be violent. Oftentimes, I see it all the time, every day. So that I think is really critical. And sometimes, ironically, people don't identify as disabled. You say, do you have a disability? And they'll say, no, I just have cancer. And that's interesting because people will say, I have cancer, but I'm not disabled. So we kind of have to clarify that. And then under gender and language, Ozzy pointed out that there needs to be clarity across the spectrum of all the agencies, and everybody's done a great job of presenting and having all these resources. But I did notice that there is different language, for every different presenter. And so Ozzy had mentioned that it would be easier if we just agreed to have clear definitions that all the stakeholders can identify with and are familiar. Next slide. So the outcomes, I thought this was pretty interesting. If you look at it, it talks about the AB 109 clients and the post-release community supervisions. And I thought it was interesting that in East County, 84% of the AB 109 clients reside in Antioch, Pittsburgh, and Bay Point. And in West County, 76% reside in the cities of Richmond, San Pablo, 3% reside in Concord and Martinez. So next slide. And then ultimately, like for goals and for future collaborations and research, I think it's important that we look at restorative justice and different resources to put together for clients, and not just for clients, but for us as a board, because we're responsible for putting this out there to the community. And I love what Mark Thomas talks about trauma, and the trauma-informed therapy, I think, is new, it's evidence-based, and it's really solid. So in conclusion, I just want to ask you guys for feedback, what maybe you'd be interested in us adding, and suggestions. Because, this policy and budget is very new to me because I'm just a psychologist. So thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, doctor. Is there any questions or comments? Hey, doctor, you did mention and I'm not sure why, but you had the Reentry Success Center on there. There was a question about that.
Oh, yeah, I think I had it, but I forgot it, so.
Okay.
I'll put it in
Well,
chat if I remember.
and I think maybe it seemed like an outlier is because actually it was a recommendation from this body last year that the West County contract, which the Reentry Success Center won again, was that it was going to be a 4-year contract. And so with that, they're the only ones that have a 4-year contract right now, and that will realign in 2025 with all of the AB 109 providers. They'll all be up for bid at the same time.
Oh, okay. And how long does the process take so if it's up for bid, how long does the whole process take?
Well, I mean, I know there's some experts in this room right now, but I believe that usually starts up like at the end of the year, the process maybe. I'm assuming that we're looking at December, probably stuff starting up to get ready.
Wow, okay.
That's the
December,
timeline, starting
January.
probably in December, and then, of course, working towards that July 1st contract start date. So over half of a year is the process.
Wow, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of time.
Do you have a question, Lila, or a comment?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Hernandez, for putting together this presentation and sharing it with the whole CAB. I'm curious about the point about the universal platform, and I was just curious if I don't know, yeah, if someone could just speak briefly to if you, Dr. Hernandez, or someone else could speak briefly to if that's a recommendation for just RJ and how it would look different than what they already have in place, or if it's more broadly to all county institutions. I just wanted to understand that one a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Lila. That's something that Ozzy and I were discussing when we were working on this. It's like, should it be county-wide, or should it be, because I have clients that, are in the system in Contra Costa County, and then they just keep moving counties. And then, what happens when you move counties? You got to get new doctors, you got to get new medicine, you got to get housing. And then if you're a felon, that's not going to happen, and you're going to end up being arrested in a different county. So I think it would make sense to make it, I don't know, broader than that, but that's why I presented today, because I know that all you guys are great at what you do, and just because I'm not thinking about it doesn't mean it's not possible, but I do understand from the research and statistics side and the funding, to get future money, it would really benefit us to have a universal platform. As to what that looks like, I don't know. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, Dale, you had a question?
Yes, I don't, by asking my question, I don't mean to imply that I don't think there could be racial prejudice in choices of jurors. But let's just take the Hispanics, for instance. If the percentage of prospective Hispanic jurors is much lower than let's say Caucasians, we could expect that there would be a fewer number of them actually impaneled. And then staying with the Hispanics, if a certain percentage of them who are called to be prospective can't speak English, that would then reduce the possible numbers also. So are those things, Doctor, taken into consideration with the statistics?
Yeah, that's something that I questioned too, and I couldn't find that. But I'll keep looking into it because it makes sense. I totally agree with you, Dale. And I don't have the answer because I couldn't find it, but
Yeah.
if
Like I
anybody-
say, I'm not assuming that there isn't prejudice, you know, in the selection of jurors, but those are just things that I think should be looked at also, taken into consideration.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
Okay, well, thank you, Doctor, for that report. And our next item is that, you know, we receive reports from CAP subcommittees and any information from external meetings that are pertinent or germane towards CAB. I actually start where from the Board of Supervisors, PPC and CCP. I, looking at those and listening to one of them, I didn't really find anything that was directly important to report here. I do know there was some reports out from probation, but that was focused on juvenile. And there also was, and pardon me if my months are running together, I know there was the report on ICE from the sheriff. But not necessarily anything specific for CAB. And unless somebody has something that I might have missed on those 3 meetings, we'll move on to the subcommittee reports.
Michael, I'm happy to jump in and fill in a little bit if you want.
Sure, Jill.
Jill Ray, Office of Supervisor Candace Anderson. At the Board of Supervisors meeting, there was actually something that's not directly related to AB 109, but might be very interesting for you all to know, especially with the Department of Juvenile Justice returning children who are incarcerated at the state level back to the counties. So the presentation from probation is viewable online. And really what ESA is looking at is creating a campus environment at the Martinez facility and really having a whole host of services and programming available to all youth, which is being triggered by the DJJ realignment, which will actually benefit all youth. And of course, the goal is to keep youth in community as much as possible. So that is available. The Truth Act Community Forum, as Michael mentioned, was at the Board of Supervisors hearing in July, and going forward, that's going to be in October, just to give everybody a heads up. So it's always going to be in October. And then there was a variety of contracts and grant applications submitted for, one from the sheriff for body worn cameras. He approval for a grant application for that. And then approved contract with Men and Women of Purpose for transition services, plus a variety of contracts for substance use disorder treatment and in West County, and a variety of behavioral health, as well as homeless services. So a whole variety of those. And then you're right, PPC was not anything related to CAB or AB 109. It was just one item because the community warning system got deferred to another meeting.
Thank you, Jill. Appreciate it. And if we can just get it, yeah, we're actually looking good on time here. We got the report from the Outreach and Community Engagement Subcommittee. Nakenya?
We do. Give me 1 second, please. Okay, so there was a few things that we discussed during our subcommittee meeting last month. We discussed potential presentators and scheduling of CAB overview presentations. We discussed talking points for the CAB. And we were also discussing a potential membership of Dale that we were going to present to everybody today. Let me pull up my notes concerning Dale. Okay, so we wanted to recommend Dale Harrington. A little bit about him. He's come to our meetings on his own, as you can see. Hi, Dale. He's worked individually with people as an administrator, and he was an executive director for a housing department. He was also a probation officer in Yolo County and Santa Barbara County. So he has like really wholesome experience to bring to this sort of thing. When we talked about his priorities for, being a member here and what he would like to do, his priorities were mental health, housing, and employment in that order. So, Mr. Harrington, would you like to share anything additional before we?
No, you've covered things fairly well. My focus through all of my life has been people, concerned about people, helping people, and so forth. And in my working career, and even in my retirement here in Rossmore, I'm involved on the Golden Rain Foundation Board of Directors. And so that focuses on services for people here too. So I think that I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, is there any questions from any of the CAB board members? We asked him a lot of questions, and so we're really impressed by him. So we wanted to recommend him for the full CAB. So if any of our other members who weren't there to ask any questions have any, please go ahead. Okay, I'll go.
Very much.
Okay, so Mr. Pitts, do we move?
Yeah, so yes. So there was the recommendation is coming from the process is to come through the Outreach and Community Engagement Subcommittee. And so we are here with Dale, and it is a voting item. So there is a recommendation that Dale Harrington as an alternate member at this point, and it is a voting item. So do I have a motion? Is any?
So moved.
So we got a motion from Crawford
I
to,
second.
who was the second?
Dr. Hernandez.
All right. So Nicole, can you help us with the,
I just have a quick process question. So we do not need to have it listed in the agenda. If it's a voting item, we can create voting items in the process of the meeting.
no, it's listed as a voting item on the agenda.
Okay, sorry, I missed it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's listed as a voting item. Oh,
But
but there also has to be
clarify,
opportunity.
if it's an agendized item, it's my understanding you can go ahead and vote on it, even if the word vote's not next to it, if the committee so chooses. Bill, am I correct on that?
Yes, as long as it's an agendized item and discussion and public comment are allowed to take place, it certainly can be voted on. All of the vote is just to help you all know kind of what direction your chair wants you to go in.
And with that, we do have to open it for public comment before we vote. Thanks for the reminder, Jill. I don't know if it was on purpose to remind me, but thank you nonetheless. So is there any public comment before we vote? So hearing none. Can you do the vote for us?
Yeah. Yes, Shayla?
Aye.
Crawford?
Aye.
Dante?
Aye.
Lila?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Dr. Hernandez?
Aye.
McKenya?
Aye.
And Dr. Cole? You're muted, Terrence. I don't know if you can unmute yourself or put it in the chat. Well, the motion does carry regardless of Terrence's decision, but yeah, we're good to go.
All right, welcome, Dale.
Thank you very much.
I know folks are gonna be battling for these subcommittees, so I don't
I do
I
have
don't
a
know which
question.
direction
Maybe
you're
Jill
going,
can,
but
I had a question, maybe Jill can clarify. So we now have Dale and Mark Thomas as approved by the board that will go to the CCP on September 3rd. But they've given me their assignments that they would like for the subcommittees. Is that something that we need to bring back in September's general meeting for them to vote on? For the subcommittees?
I don't think so. I think that you all go for an indication of interest. I mean, they can participate. They won't be voting members until after the CCP vote.
All right.
excellent. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. I'm honored.
And so now if we could have a report from Programs and Service Subcommittee.
Here I am. So I wasn't at the last programs and services subcommittee. So if anybody wants to add in, I'm just going to give a high level summary. And again, this is Lila Blanchard. So there was significant discussion about restorative justice and a few resources that that the subcommittee wanted to invite into the next meeting, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So that was the first agenda item. There was also a discussion about the sequential intercept model and some research that was done a number of years ago and work with that in order to look at folks with mental health issues who were incarcerated. And so significant time was also spent on that, as well as reviewing the Results First clearinghouse website together to discuss evidence-based practices, as we've heard mentioned several times in the meeting. And there was also the interest to revisit some of the survey themes. As folks might remember, we are not doing a survey to all of the different programs this year because we did the last one late in the year. And the survey results are quite narrative and long. And so that was a suggestion for the next meeting to revisit that. We're also in the process of trying to invite RISE to do a presentation on their restorative justice program for youth, which is a diversion program that is in operation in Contra Costa County. Yeah, we're looking into that to see if we can line that up for this next meeting. And then the ORJ is looking to bring back some information as well from the Sheriff's Department on restorative justice programs. And, we'll be looking to make recommendations there was a review process of recommendations from the SIM map that the subcommittee will also be considering. I think that there were like 10 of those, and so there'll be more conversation, especially on one of the last recommendations in this next coming meeting. And then there was also a conversation about adjusting sites visit strategies in light of COVID, and continuing to interact with programs and invite them into this space in order to educate us about their program, with COVID safety protocols. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to add to that? And Michael, I'm sorry, it was right on the agenda what I said earlier, so I know my prior comment and question was a little bit off base, but thanks for answering it anyway.
Oh, no, not at all. No problem. All right, thank you, Lila. Now we had a report from the Policy and Budget Subcommittee. John Tay or his designee.
I believe that'll be me, Michael. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So just a brief overview of what we went over during the Policy and Budget Subcommittee. We sort of confirmed our budget proposal and narrative schedule. So it was good that we did that. And we also got our strategies for when we will be inviting the CBOs to come in for the budget requests. We outlined some great strategies either for them to come in. We designated 2 different dates with a post discussion to give us time for it sort of to sink in and think about everything that has been given to us. And the CBOs can also submit in writing their proposed recommendations. We also are getting assistance from ORJ with sending out those notifications on multiple times. So they'll have plenty of time to sort of, just let it soak in before they can come and present for us or send us that in writing. Other than that, we definitely discuss the points of our pillars for our talking points when we will be going out and meet with the representatives. I know there was a little bit of discussions about the verbiage concerning a few of the pillars, but I think we sort of just got to the bottom of that and clearly understand that we're going to back what talking points that we have rather than focus on changing any of the verbiage at this time. And that's what I have as far as the brief overview of things that we went over, unless anyone else has anything from the subcommittee. All right.
And I just want to make a comment because on the fact that the invite the CBOs to come in to the subcommittee or to the full cab, and things are a little different because we are talking about that folks that are coming in will not be in contract. So I just wanted to let it be known, and then we'll talk to the subcommittees as well, that anyone whose contract is ending isn't so much making a budget request, but they're kind of maybe encouraging CAB to make recommendations as to what services the county should seek out, maybe through the RFP or what amount they might. So even though the contractors may be applying for funds coming up for the next RFP, those funds are not awarded, and that you know, we're kind of asking them to come in and speak to their program or the adequacy or inadequacy of like the current funding. So I don't know how, if that was clarifying or not, but that's something that I'll repeat again and discuss with the subcommittee chair. And also, if there are CBOs that do want to report, that's kind of what we're asking. It's maybe a little different than it has been in the past.
Michael, just to confirm, are you speaking about 9-9? You said we'll have non-contracted CBOs come in?
No, I'm saying that when we put the request out for CBOs to come, they're not actually, anybody who's coming is not in contract for 22 to 25 yet.
Oh, got you.
So I mean, as we're sitting now, there may be somebody in here that knows, but I know I don't know what the pie is going to look like for that, you know, what the RFPs are. So
right.
No one could really speak specifically to funding needs, but if they're going to come in and talk about their program, and again, the adequacy perhaps of the funding, or even if the idea is that if there was a need for expansion, and then that may be something that CAB would be behind to kind of support.
Gotcha.
I love it when you say gotcha, because I know that it makes sense if Dante said gotcha. So, because Dante will not just say gotcha if it doesn't make sense to him. So I appreciate it. Okay. Thank you, Dante. And so, the last agenda item, and I'll take credit if there has been some confusion on kind of where we want to be as far as talking about the talking points in CAB policy brief. So going forward, the talking points are part of the agenda for all the subcommittees going forward. And so I know we talked about it some in the outreach subcommittee. Jonte mentioned the pillars and a discussion there. So again, for our folks that we're looking at, talking points are what we're going to take out as ambassadors to discuss with elected officials and department heads. So the pillars of the talking points, those are basically the tenets of CAB. That's not changing. So I know folks, some of us kind of jumped into the verbiage. It's not necessarily something that's going to be done at the subcommittee, but this is the time to start looking at what are the items that we maybe wanted to address in our talking points, and more importantly in the CAB policy brief. So I know we had 2 presentations today. There's a possibility that some of the information that was brought to us, that may be something that we decide as a body that's going to be part of our policy brief. So I like to kind of say the talking points are kind of the down and dirty of, hey, here's CAB, here's what we are, here's what our job is, and here are a few things that we're really focusing on in this is our CAB year and going forward. The policy brief is just much more detailed and gives the hows and whys in a lot of situations. So with that, it is part of, we want to look to start having each of the subcommittees look at what may be conglomerated together, some ideas that are some of the things we might want to focus on and in our talking points. And so when I said I took credit for, I don't know if that's the right word, I'm taking credit for the confusion. I understand there was some confusion, that we were not doing a policy brief this year. And if that came across somehow, I apologize. I think probably where it came from was where I was really commenting on how, you know, this is just my third year. So, but it was just an anomaly that we were in July and August, and the county was still addressing some of our recommendations from last year. And that was a good thing. And going forward, our expectation is that we are going to do a CAB policy brief, and there is no there's no rule that it actually has to be in the exact same format. There's no indication that it may. There's no expectation that we come up with another policy brief that has, you know what, we need at least 10 recommendations. So the thing is that we really need to kind of pick through what has been recommended in the past and to see if that's something that hasn't been addressed. I know, for instance, I'm just going by memory, I just know that housing is something that's been brought up in numerous reports. So maybe there's going to be a little bit more flesh and more specific. I know there was some specific requests about H3 and ORJ and things last year. So that is kind of our marching orders. And I know I'm on a subcommittee as well. So the idea is we're going to start really looking at that in the next couple weeks. And those recommendations will be put together, and then it's going to be decided by the full CAB, you know, what is going to be kind of our platform for this year. And so, thank you, Nicole, as far as it has been attached. And I know you guys seen this so many times, this CAB, our talking points. And pretty much, if we were looking at the introduction of our statement and pillars, that's going to remain the same. Every year, we're looking at increasing AB 109 budget transparency and accountability. The bullets under there, they're going to change specifically because some things have changed in recommendations. Number 3 was increased capacity of Office of Reentry and Justice. I think we've done that. And then we're going to support CAB's policy and budget recommendations. Those specifics are going to change. So I'm just asking that we're all going to kind of look at that and get moving. And then also our budget proposal narrative schedule and upcoming CAB meetings. They have been put in the packet, kind of our tentative timeline to get things done. Oh, thank you. See, I'm cheating. I'm looking at it myself here. But so for our members, this is something we're gonna look at, and something that maybe should be looked at in the subcommittee meetings if you haven't done so already.
The ORJ's been attaching this in the subcommittee meetings and kind of going over it in each subcommittee meeting, but essentially just wanted to highlight that these are the established general body and subcommittee meetings. Wanted to put this together in a way that you guys can avoid special meetings at all costs. But, you know, unfortunately, there might be an instance where we have to have a special meeting as we get closer to the budget workshop, the CCP budget workshop. But essentially, this is the timing that we have to do the work in the subcommittee meetings and to get it in front of the full body and have them take a look at it, weigh in on it, and then get it in front of the November CCP budget workshop.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly for last year, and I don't know if this was some compaction issues due to us getting a late start and with the pandemic and all, but I swear we had a full cab special meeting that was 15 minutes long, and it was solely to vote on our moving on our policy brief to CCP. So
Yeah, because we submitted in November the budget workshop, not only the budget proposal narrative, but also the policy brief all at once. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was why in October of last year, there was a couple different special meetings was to get all the feedback from the group to get it over to the budget workshop.
okay.
So that's November 5th. I'm sorry. Yeah, November 5th. And it's going to have to be turned in October, right? That's the day of the meeting. So I'll be working with Melissa, which is on the call, and Paul to get those actual dates. But this is just the timing based off of what I saw last year.
Right.
The only thing that is permanent right now in the CCP budget schedule is the dates of the actual CCP meetings.
All right, so I did want to have that as a agenda item, just for that reason. And if there's any questions, we can sort those out at our subcommittee meetings. So is there any comments or questions from anyone?
Michael, I just wanted to jump in and just point out how important it is, and I know you all know this, to attend the meetings or let Nicole know if you can't, because I think some of the challenges last year were quorum related, which is why a special meeting had to be scheduled. So just really super important. I know how busy everybody is, and Zoom meetings are not everybody's favorites, but just super important to have that quorum so that this business can move forward.
And especially
thank you, Jill.
crucial
And
as we go
actually,
into the next coming months.
Yeah. And actually, to piggyback on that, there was a struggle for quorum for a full cab last year. And so I don't think it was something that was really mentioned from me, and probably should have, because there was just that relief, to be honest, that we were scrambling to make sure that there was quorum last year. That has not been an issue for full cab this year. However, the subcommittee meetings, it is important, just to reiterate, subcommittee meetings, if folks can't make it, those things can be rescheduled, but to have folks show up and we don't have quorum, or we don't have to have the meeting, that's problematic. And as well, if you are assigned to some other meetings, I know we have chairs on some committees. We have a chair on I should say, we sit in a chair in other committees. It's important that we communicate if we're not going to be able to make those, so that we have our representation. Right.
Everyone should have an Outlook invite for the subcommittees that they've committed to, as well as the general full body. If you don't have that on your calendar, please let me know, and I'll make sure to resend that. But on my end, it looks like everyone has it, so that may not be true on your end. So
yes.
You can also subscribe in the Agenda Center for all notifications as well.
Okay.
If you don't know how to do that, I'm happy to show you as well.
So with that, is there anything else? Well, I want to thank everybody for their presentations. And I also want to thank everybody again for attending. We had a good turnout, 23 people. So thank you very much. And this time I'd like to let you know that our next meeting, September 9th.
We'll have a CCP meeting on September 3rd. So be there.
Oh, you know what?
Especially Dale. Dale, you need to be there. And Mark, if you're still on, you can hear me. I'll be reaching out to you individually just to when the agenda gets posted, so you have the information you need to join. But
great, thank you very much.
we both will be presented there as to the CCP Executive Committee to get approved for your membership, so.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah.
Hey, and they're all,
There is-
you have everything right here for me, right in front of me on the bottom of the.
And there is some
agenda.
follow-ups to the CAB policy briefs on the data and resources as well for that meeting, so. A good meeting to attend.
Got it. Okay, and thanks again. So I'm adjourned till September 9th at 10 a.m. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, you guys.